rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years, and let her sew again.
Hello and welcome back. So today I am going to get started putting Barbie back together again. And I don't know if you're aware, the person that bought this machine is Bob Fowler for his children, grandchildren, everybody, but to display also. So it's not going to say that it's nervous, but putting together and building a machine for the king of super shiny parts and perfectly timed singers, it's a challenge, but I'm up to it. I am up to it, Bob. Just don't judge me too harshly. So the first thing I'm going to start working on is the front here. So let me go ahead and get her tipped up. All right, do you remember that broken cog that was in there? I just had a heck of a time loosening it up, but the drill seemed to be the trick. So it is loosened now. I should be able to come in here with a screwdriver and pull it out the rest of the way, trying not to scratch my pretty pink paint as I do it. All right, that was a job. I got it out. So this was the problem right here, that crack right there. And I think I got it out. I did, 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿 the head of that screw a little bit, but not terribly. I'm gonna sand that down a bit so it looks pretty again. And I have a different cog that actually Bob had sent me, so he's gonna get his cog back in his machine. And just for fun, I turned on one of Bob's reassembly a 66 video just to see what he does. And he's tapping in his bushing, and you remember I can get my bushing out, and I didn't want to bang it too hard. And so instead of putting in a clean bushing, you know what? I'm polishing my bushing in place. So I have an 800 grit sandpaper here that I have just cut a little piece off of, running it back and forth, and that's going to clean it up pretty well. Of course, I'm not done yet. That's going to clean it up pretty well and give it a nice shine down here. Up here, not so much, but you know what? You're not going to look at it out there, but down here it's going to look pretty. All right, I'm actually going to be starting down here at the bottom. And I don't know if you remember this. This was another troublesome point that I had when I was taking it apart, and this actually broke while I was taking it apart. So this is a replacement. Again, thank you, Bob. Okay, so mine has a built-in flat head at the top, okay? So for some of these machines, they don't have this and you can just slide it on afterwards. Mine, I have to put this through, and I will add some oil through the little oil hole here after I get it on, and then put it into this hole and get it tightened up. Okay, so I want to show you, I can't just leave this up there because I don't have a fancy stand to hold up my machine, but this was black-sided at one point, and I have actually polished off most of the black siding, but I can't get it totally clean. Trust me, it's clean, it's polished as well as I can, but that is residual black siding, Not all of the parts are, but some of them are. And if you can see down here, I think everything is moving very well. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next piece. Okay, so now that this is in, I'm going to take this little piece, and it is also one that was black-sided, now is gray-sided, but it is clean, trust me. I polished the little screw and put some oil in here, in that little hole. There's a little hole, put a drop of oil in there. And this bearing is going to be placed inside here. I don't even know if you can see. There's a little slot in this piece, okay? This lines up in there. And I'm going to place it right here so that it lines up. Get my screwdriver and go ahead and snug this in so it's nice and tight but not binding. Okay, so I want to try it at this angle so you can see it. This is the piece that I just put in. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little drop of oil here where this bearing is, just to keep it nice and happy. Looking good. Okay, let me move on to the next spot. Okay, so I'm going to get started putting this little beastie back in. And I wanted to point out that yes, I have cleaned and polished my pivot points. I'm just going to go ahead and get those started in the two holes. Well, let me lift it up so you can see what I mean. There's a hole here on this side and a matching one over on this side. I'm just going to get them started in those holes so that it'll be easier for me to go ahead and set that shaft in. Okay, so I've got my little points just started here. I'm going to get my shaft. Now there's a bearing here. Okay, what is that? I don't know. I do this separate when I'm cleaning it so that I can just unscrew one screw, clean it, put it back together, and then put this screw in. That way the adjustments should be correct at this point, this way with this piece, okay? So that's an off-camera thing. But I need to set this bar so that it's in between these 2 points. Back you out just a little bit more, just so that she can set in there very loosely. Okay. Now this point here that had the bearing, remember this piece, that little fork that went in, this bearing is sitting in between the thumb and finger of this fork. Let me lift you up here. Right here, okay? So it should be able to move. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of oil there to keep that moving freely, and then we're going to be adjusting. She popped out these little pivot points here. Okay, so I think I have it adjusted fairly well at this point. I can always adjust it some more later, but I have this little bearing right here is pretty well centered with this fork, thumb, and finger that's holding on to it. And I have it snugged up enough that it's not moving back and forth. It's not bound up. It's like I tighten it and then loosen just a hair so that it can move freely, you know, if I turn it this way. I need to go ahead and put in the fork that connects to this, which is the stitch length. This here is what is moving your stitch length back and forth, because the feed dogs rest in this little part, and it's your feed dogs moving back and forth that determine how long your stitches are. So let me go ahead and put this back down again, get my fork out, make sure everything is cleaned up, and I'm going to go ahead and get that set in. I just had one of those moments, and I think I need a break. I got my fork, I got my screw with a cute little multi-tabbed washer on it and everything, and I was ready to put it back in. I'm like, oh my gosh, my block is missing. And I was freaking out. I was going through all of my bags and everything because my block was missing, because I'm really used to a block looking like this, okay? And it just had in my mind, it looks like this, and I went through all of my stuff. So I ended up grabbing this off of a parts container I have on my shelf, cleaned it up. I was just about ready to put it in. I'm like, wait a minute, no. This machine has a block that looks like this. So this is my block. I'm gonna polish up this little area in here and everything. But basically the way it works is this is my fork, and the block has this little groove in it, all right? And as this lever gets raised and lowered through this little slot, it's going to adjust the way that this moves back and forth, you know. And I can't show you that inside the machine, and it's kind of a pain to get it all placed, but just trust me, this is going to be actually like this, okay, inside of there. And then this big bolt with the big shoulder and the multi-tabbed little washer is going to go through here, this hole, and into here to hold it all together. So give me a minute, let me get it all situated by reaching through here and everything, and I will be back shortly. Okay, I've got it in. I got to tell you, these are a lot easier to get put in than the screw type. So much easier. It's like there's one less component to try to make into a Chinese puzzle in there. But what I need to do now is get this part down here connected. Okay, right here. And I have this bolt with a shoulder. You can see it's, well, no, you can't. There, I have this bolt with the big shoulder, and you can see that the little screw part is off center. That is for a reason. That's going to go in here, and it has a nice little nut to snug it up from behind. I need to go grab my little wrench to get this tightened up here. Let's see. Oops, dropped it. Trust me, I'm going to do it off camera with my little wrench. Get this snugged up. Then I got to take a break because my little dogs are barking their head off, and I got to go see what's going on. So, one of my dogs is a little rescue, and she lived in a cage her first 3 years, you know, so she's still learning to be a dog. And my horse is standing right next to the fence. And usually the dogs could care less about the horse, but this one is just intrigued and barking her little head off. So that's what all that is about. Nothing traumatic, just, you know, dog trying to bully a horse. And she's a Maltese. She's tiny. She weighs maybe 8 pounds. So anyway, I need to go ahead and get this little guide put back on. So I'm going to slide it over this way, rotate it. And it's got a couple little bitty screw holes here at the top and bottom for my little bitty screws that I have polished. Let me get those set in. Okay, so this does have back tack. I like to tighten this screw up just enough that my lever will stay exactly where I want it, you know, but it's not too stiff. If this is too tight, this doesn't want to move. If it's too loose, it just flaps all over the place, you know, so I think we're at a good happy medium here. So yeah, I'm just going to move on now. Trying to rebuild a pink machine and not get her dirty in the process is challenging, but you know, I think I'm just going to keep wiping as I go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get my feed dogs back in. This is what they're looking like now. You can see that. I need to slide them in under here. This little hole is where I'm going to be putting this screw through, which is going to connect the feed dogs. At this point, I am centering the screw right in the center of this hole. There's a little play where you can loosen it and move the feed dogs up and down, but I will deal with that in a minute, because I'm going to need to get the plates on the front before I can set the adjustment of the height of the feed dog. Okay, so I just have this plate set on here, but I want to show you that when I'm turning it, I have my stitch length at its longest length over here, and I think that my feed dogs are centered pretty well in there, and the height, I think, is pretty good. Of course, the purchaser can make adjustments based on their own needs, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and finish. I'm going to polish this up, but I still need to be able to get in here and deal with a whole bunch of stuff right there. Alright, so I just went back underneath and tightened up all those pivot point screws and their nuts, and I think we are still good. I just popped the plate back on just to double check that everything is still lined up, and I think we're good. So now that everything down here looks pretty good, I need to be able to get in here, put the hook, put all the bobbin stuff back in. So I need to take this back out. I needed to put it in so I could adjust everything underneath before, but I'll put it back in a bit. For right now, I'm just gonna, oops, wrong way. Come back in here, pull that screw out right here one more time, and then start to work on the other part. I'm just dropping the race in, put a little bit of oil in there. It's very cleaned and polished. She's moving quite freely, which is nice. Let me tip her up so I can get access down here below. This is the same shaft here, okay? All right, this is gonna need to go onto this shaft right there. Okay, so now I have this little piece. Looks like a telephone of old. Just slide it here and up over this little screw, and it's got this bolt with the big shoulder, which goes through, and I'm going to tighten this up. I don't know if my camera is aimed right, but I can tell when I'm turning the shaft, it is moving very freely. The shaft is over here by the floor, so it keeps hitting the rubber on my little tabletop. But trust me, it is moving well. Okay, I am looking at my how to time the sewing hook things and everything. I'm going to go ahead and get everything up here put in before I try to get everything timed up. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tip her on her back, so I'm looking at her nose and get started getting all of these parts put back in. Okay, before I actually get started with everything on the front nose, I'm going to put this little thread guide back on. If I could tip you, this bushing that I did not remove, but I did polish, that is where this little loop, a tiny screw goes through that loop, and it's going to sit right here. So I'm going to go ahead and screw that in. In this little baggie, I have that, and I also have this little bitty wire. Okay, this is also a thread guide that gets pushed into the front. And I'm going to tap that in right now. I was polishing this tiny little wire last night, and I got distracted, and my polisher flung it across the room, and you wouldn't believe how hard it is to find a little wire on a big concrete floor. But anyway, let me go ahead and get this tapped in there. The other one's screwed in down here, so we don't need to worry about those. All right, I'm going to start off by getting my lifter lever in, because last time I did not, and I had to remove things to get to it. So, you know, live and learn. There's a hole down here. I know it is. There's a shoulder on this screw, so even when you have it screwed all the way in, you should be able to move your lever back and forth. If you can't, it's probably stuck underneath that shoulder. All right, so while we're dealing with things that go in the background, I'm putting this in. It is the piece that releases tension. So when this lifts up, this gets pushed over, or it will, you know, when everything is set in correctly. And when this gets pushed over, it's going to release the tension on the tension mechanism, as you would. So let me go ahead and get this screwed in. There's another little screw with a tiny shoulder that's going to go right here. And it gets screwed into this hole in the casting right there. Again, you want to make sure that when this screw is screwed in all the way, this still moves easily, okay? Alrighty, next step. Now, I cleaned and disassembled and reassembled my tension off camera, and I am just going to go ahead and pop the entire little piece back in right now, and this screw is what is going to come across the canister of that entire piece, you know, right there. That's going to hold it in place. So at this point, my little thread take-up spring, if I bring it down and then let go, it bounces back up. I like that. I think we are good. I'm just going to go ahead and put this back upright so I can finish working on the front nose. I wanted to show you when I raise this now, you can see it pushing against the little pin, so this is releasing the tension. Okay, so we know that is working correctly. Yay. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle bar back in. This is the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to slide it in. Right there, all is good. Okay, now I need to get all of my pieces. Move my camera up here to put in this area. Okay, so I'm going to start with this little tri-armed thingy here. This is the thread take-up lever. This, hang on. When you're looking at it this way, this big piece that's on top with all the big numbers, and it's a bigger piece, bigger cylinder, that is what this big shouldered bolt goes through, okay? And it has a little dot there. I'm going to put a drop of oil in there while it's easy to reach. Spin her around, okay. That is what's going to get screwed into this hole right here, like that. Okay, let's see if you can see in here. Right here, there's a little set screw, and I already have it out far enough that it's not going to be in my way, but not falling out, okay? On this little piece, there's a flat part. That flat part needs to go up against where that set screw is coming in. So I'm just, taking this arm of that 3-armed piece, lining it up over that hole, and then placing this piece. I have this connected already because I did not want to lose track of which way this little dog bone went. I put it in upside down once, and I vowed I would never do that again. So to me, it's easier to assemble it somewhere else. So now I should have that flat area there so that I can reach. Okay, you need to get a screwdriver that's slim enough to go through this hole on the side and reach that little set screw there and tighten it up. And it should snug up against that flat area. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this down because that's where it needs to be, and just make sure everything is turning well, and it is. So yay, that's a good thing. Okay, so I just popped this timing gauge down here on the top of this little tube, which shall not be removed, and I'm going to put the little needle bar holder right here, and the combination of this with its little marks on it and this little tab should make it fairly easy to time this thing, I am hoping. Okay, I got the needle bar through. Now there's a flat part. That flat part needs to be in the back because that is what the little screw that's on the back of this piece needs to be able to cinch up to. Okay, so the front of the needle bar should have this little groove right there. I'm going to go ahead and get my skinny screwdriver through this hole in the back right here and tighten up the screw that I can reach that way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put my little needle clamp on here so I do not lose it, and I am going to need to take a break for a while. I've got lots of things I need to take care of in the house. But I wanted to get all of these needle bar pieces in before I lose anything, because that's never fun. Okay, so now that's in. I do have a pack of new needles out here, so I can put a brand new needle in, and when I get back, we will adjust the timing of the needle bar and then go on with the presser foot and the presser bar. Okay, I am back, and I did a little playing with lining up my timing mark with the top of my little toe there, cranking it over until it lines up with the second mark, making sure my needle is placed so it's just in front of the hook down here, which you cannot see, I guess. Sorry about that. If you want more detail about how to do all the timing, go and watch one of Bob Fowler's playlists, because honestly, that's where I am watching while I'm setting it, just so I don't forget anything. But I feel confident that it's decent where it is. I may have to do a final needle bar height adjustment later, but I am good for right now. I'm going to get started putting the presser bar and all of its accessories back in now. All right, I am going to go ahead and get this block in here. Move this out of the way just a little bit there. Okay, a lot of times they'll have a little screw here that, you know, spreads it out when you tighten it and lets it come back together. But this one, she does not. So there's a slot over here. I want to make sure, sorry about that, that it can move up and down easily, and it can, so that's great. Let me do one more quick little polish on my presser bar, and I will be right back. Now, I don't remember if the washer is going to fit through my little threaded area up here or not. So sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and push my presser bar down, slide my little washer on it, slide my spring onto it, and then come down here and bring it through this block that we just slid in, and now I should be able to take it through this hole down here. Put a drop of oil in there and just turn it, and get it worked through. Just remembered I forgot to pull the masking out of that hole. No wonder it was giving me grief. Okay, so this is what that liquid masking looks like when you pluck it out with your little sharp dental tool there. Okay, so I have just screwed my little presser foot down on the bottom, and I am just going to get this little finial up here started at the very top, just barely on there, just to make sure that that little washer does not go flying out. Okay, but I need to put my plate back on because we need to make some adjustments to this height. All right, so at this point I still don't have feed dogs in here, but I want to show you when my presser foot is all the way down, I can lift my little arm just a little bit and then lift up my presser foot. Okay, so it's like click, lift. Now, this is a pretty substantial, I don't have a ruler handy. It's a pretty substantial amount of lift there. I would say it's at least 1/4 inch, maybe a hair more. So I am very happy with that. I do love a good lift. I need to cinch down this screw a little bit more so there's a little more pressure on that spring. There, nice and snappy. Okay, I'll show you. I was beating myself up because there was an extra screw in my dish, you know, and that's always disastrous. But I had completely forgotten that when I traded this out, you know, way back here, way back then, this was the one from mine, and the one that was sent me had one in it. So I did not, in fact, mess something up. It just goes in there. So yay, that's a happy thought. All right, so this is what we've got right now. I am feeling really good about that, but it is getting late. It's super dark outside. Lots of gunshots going off, but you know, we live in the country, so it's probably people zeroing in their hunting guns, you know, it's that time of year. But still, the shots freak out the little dogs, so I'm gonna run back to the house. I will get the rest of the plates, the feed dogs, everything that has to do with the bobbin, all of that put in the morning. But for right now, she's doing great. See you then. Hello and welcome back. It has actually been a few days, and let me tell you what has been going on. First of all, do you remember when I was putting this back together, and I had to use a drill to get this, you know, first cog out, and I had the drill bit going through here, not drill bit, but the flat bit, okay? And I put a couple little chips in my paint there, so I wasn't thrilled with that. So the other day, I decided, you know what? I am going to do touch-up paint day. And I touched up paint there, a couple other little spots, and then I was thinking, well, since I have the machine where I'm going to need to re-clear coat some spots anyway, I might as well make up more decals because I got more water slide decal paper in and finish up the way I planned. And I feel like it's a lot better. I was able to add a couple more decals here so that this area is more balanced. This decal is going to be behind the medallion right there, so it just barely peeks out. I think that's pretty cool. And I was able to put the matching little flourish on the front that's on the back. So just some things, you know, to tie it up and make it as I intended. And off camera, I had a couple conversations with Bob, and one of them was, if you remember, this big Godzilla had that massive old school black motor on it. Well, he wants this to be turned into a hand crank. So what I did is pull a spoked wheel off of a old parts machine that I have and stripped it, painted it, clear coated it and everything, and it's on here. And I have a hand crank. It's just one of those cheap Chinese hand cranks, but that's honestly about all you can get out there right now. And I have it over getting some touch-up paint on it right now, so I can't show it to you, but that's going to bolt on here. If you have a machine that has a boss area that you can bolt one onto, yeah, I think that that's going to be a really fun thing. A lot of the treadles that I do don't have a place to screw a hand crank on, so you're kind of out of luck at that point. So anyway, that kind of catches you up to speed with where we are right now. As you can see, I did put on the hand wheel because I wanted to make sure that the Godzilla bobbin winder was going to work with this hand wheel. And the important thing is that the tire part is going to be lined up where the flat of the wheel is, because to work this bobbin winder, you just push it. Okay, when you're not using it, you lift it up, push it down. I think I need to tighten that screw a bit. Okay, so if it's lined up, it's going to spin and all is good. So anyhow, let me get myself organized here. What I still need to do is finish putting in the bobbin case. And I think just about everything else after that is decorative. So let me get her situated over here. I think you can kind of see that area this way. Get all my stuff together and we'll get this put in and make sure that the needle bar height is good and all the timing is good. Actually, what I want to do is get the other baggie. I want to put my medallion back on. I did buy these brass pins, which I am really, really hoping will be able to hold it on, and it looks like they go through those holes, honestly, almost too easily. These are size 16. I think I should up a size, but this will work for today. I'm not worried about that. This is my little medallion, so I'm just going to set her over the hole. And because these are going to go through so easily, I may see about reusing the old nails. Let's see if this is going to work. Well, let me tell you what I have figured out. I used the original little stud that came with it, and it is actually the same diameter as the 16 size. And when I pop it in, you know, they stick about the same as these guys do. So let me tell you my plan. First of all, I'm going to order the next size up for future projects. But for this one, what I'm going to do is use the original little studs, because if one fits the same as the other, these are already short. Oh, and the other thing is these are 3/4 inch. Next time I'm only going to order 1/2 inch. Okay, so about that. Just to hold it in, because I'm not going to have that back part to bend over, I am going to mix up a little epoxy. And I am just going to put a very touch of epoxy inside of those holes with a very sharp little tool. So it's only inside the holes. And then place the, just set this down here somewhere. And then set the medallion on it, tape it in place. And then tomorrow the epoxy will be completely cured and I can remove the tape. All right, so I am just with my tiny little dental tool, just putting a little bit into each side here, just to have something for those little brads to grab onto. Okay, wipe this off because I don't want to destroy my little tool. And set my epoxy aside, and yes, I know it's gray. It will be behind the medallion. I just couldn't find, I have some clear in here somewhere and I couldn't find it, so gray will have to be. So now I'm just going to set my medallion over those holes and slip the original pins back in. I did polish them just a moment ago. Just push those on a hair to make sure they are set well. And they feel like they are. Okay, so I have her sitting in my wooden box just because that way I can turn the wheel. And I want to show you, I did put her race, her positioning bracket back in, and on this machine there is a little screw right here, right there, that you need to put in to hold it together. I have no doubt I have adjustments I need to make, but I just wanted to get her put together really quickly. So, let me move the camera here. So if I turn the wheel, you can see everything's moving well, which is lovely. But before I can congratulate myself too much, I need to make sure that my clearances are suitable for my thread to be able to pass through, and do a test run to see, first of all, to wind a bobbin so that I can put a wound bobbin in here to see if my needle will pick it up. So lots to do still. Well, actually it was not a quick bobbin winder because I forgot I don't have that hand crank on it, and you know, it was a little touchy trying to do two things at once with one hand. So I just put a small amount of thread onto a bobbin, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pop her in here, and I just redid her needle pen. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pop her in here, and let's see if she's going to want to come around. Okay, I need to tell you that I believe at this point that I have my needle bar right. I had to look just to make sure, and it is about 1/16 of an inch below the point of the sewing hook, and I believe that's where it is. So I'm going to assume that all is good here. If I need to adjust it, I can go ahead and pull it out and do it again. But you have to start somewhere. So before I can actually test everything out, I'm going to go ahead and put her front plate back on. Her plate's down here, and you can see her front plate is a lot shinier than it used to be. So let me go ahead and get its assorted screws put back on here. On the top, you use the smaller screw, just a little flathead, and I put my screwdriver away. Put that on the top, and then the thumb screw is going to go onto the bottom. All right, so I have my front plate on. I've got her threaded. Before I can actually test her out, though, I need to put some feed dogs in this girl. So would it be easier if this presser foot was not in place? Yes. Yes, it would. So I'm going to pop that off for a minute. Put my feed dogs back in here. I'm going to need to flip it over, put that screw back in. You saw that earlier, so I don't think that I need to show it to you, but let me do that and I will be right back. I have put my feed dogs back in. I adjusted them a little bit lower, I think. You know, we can always adjust those higher if we need, but this is the first time to see if it will pick up the thread. And it did. Oh, yay. Okay, so that is a very good sign. That is an extremely good sign. I'm going to go ahead and put this sliding plate back on my presser foot. Back on, and we are going to try to just turn the hand wheel a couple times and see if she'll sew, because she was so locked up when I got her. I've never seen if she actually sewed before, so this could be fun. Okay, so literally this is the first time I have it set at a fairly long, stitch length, but I didn't have my needle clamped in well. Hang on. Let me put my needle back in and tighten her up. I don't know why I didn't do that. Okay. It looks like she's sewing. She sounds really good, and it looks like she's sewing. Yay! And I need to adjust her timing. Her tension. I am just sewing on a paper towel, so you know. Okay. The paper towel it's kind of a good thing to sew on it when you first do it, because if there's any excess oil droplets around, it will absorb those. And I think we're looking pretty good. Okay, let's see if I raise up my thread take-up lever. Will it pull out? There it goes. All right, we are good. Let me do a couple fine-tuning things. I'm not actually going to do a real test until I can get her hand crank on, because that way I can move her a lot easier. I'm just going to let her sit here for a little bit, and tomorrow or the next day, hopefully, I will have all the paint dry on the hand crank so I can get her put back on here, and we'll be ready to test her out for good. All right, it has actually been another couple days, but I had some issues trying to get her tension set correctly, and I think I finally did. So I'm just going to show you really quickly how she sews. I do have a hand crank on, and I will give you a close-up of that in a minute. But I think that everything is feeding through well. She has very straight and quiet stitches. Okay, can we see that? I don't know if you can. Let's see the back. The back looks good too. I don't know. Sometimes you just don't know what's wrong. And I pulled everything apart. I had to take apart her bobbin case down there. I had to take everything apart, put it back together, and then it worked. I'm not sure which part, if it was even one, or if it was several that weren't exactly perfect, but now she's working. So I have this hand crank on here. I need to tighten up that screw just a little bit. Let me get a screwdriver, tighten that up, and then I will put her in a position where you will be able to see the back side also. So here she is. Here's her little hand crank. Oops, she's on my very tilty turntable. You can see these hand cranks work. I need to put this in a little bit to hold it in. They're a little wobbly. It's just, the little import hand crank, but it does work on these spoked wheels. So that's fun. Here's the back side. And again, wibbly wobbly on my turntable. I need to adjust that. And back here to the front. So I'm going to go ahead and try to sew on her a little bit longer, just to make sure that everything is good. Take some final pictures, and she's going to be ready for Bob. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Oh, I wanted to also show you, I decorated her spool pen because I could.
I found an antique sewing machine, forgotten and alone. I touched her rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years, and let her sew again.